Welcome to Take It from the Ironwoman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Ironwoman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Ironwoman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Ironwoman. We only have special guests, and today we go to Sarah. She is the CEO, founder of Lilith NYC. First, we give thanks to Mark Hockesang, Heavy Hitters Sports. He introduced us and he says, Suzanne, you need to talk to Sarah. She has a cool story. Let's listen to that story.
Hi, Suzanne. I'm Sarah. I was born and raised in Queens, New York, been a lifelong sneakerhead, and I started Lilith NYC back in 2020, just given all my frustrations over the years of being like a woman sneakerhead and not being really able to find the styles and sizes that I wanted to shop. So I launched, really focused on women and femme consumers. We've been in the market for 2 years now.
So it's 2024. 2022, we were still in the pandemic. How did that all come about?
I was really crazy. I was actually at Nike. I was in a data role. A lot of people assume I was working in product innovation, but my background's actually in analytics. I'm someone who just loves data and building software. I was at Nike because they had acquired a predictive analytics platform. I was just kind of in charge of replatforming that for internal Nike users. And being there and just looking at how the industry was moving, we saw that women consumers were being more and more vocal about the limitations of footwear. I had given my 2 years there and I was like, what, there's so much more to do in the market. I actually quit March 2020. That was right around the pandemic. Like 2 weeks later, after I gave notice, the pandemic was kind of announced and we were all sheltering in place. And so it was quite a ride, but it was a good time because that first year of 2020 was when we built. I don't have product experience. I had to hire footwear designers. I had to hire a brand agency to basically bring the brand ethos to life. We're really building a brand from scratch. It was a good time to build as you're sitting at home. We're all working kind of remotely. So it worked out that way. But we didn't formally launch until November 21, because of all of the production delays. At the time, we were actually producing in China. The unique situation with China is that when they have one case of COVID, the entire city shuts down, meaning you cannot have a skeleton team running your production at the factory, which understandably so, right? They need to go home and take care as well. But that means that production is at a complete standstill. That was just really eye-opening, right? That was just one of the struggles. And then the second struggle I'd say was probably air freight costs. Cost to ship product back to the States was insane because usually you would go for ocean, but so many of the pandemic supplies were taking up the ocean freight capacity. And so you'd have to pay a premium to ship it back via air freight, which is what we ended up doing. But I don't even want to think about those numbers right now. It was an interesting time when we launched.
Who is working with you? How many people do you need? And
small team. I say we, it's myself, it's 2 part-time footwear designers, and then we have someone who handles our social media. But it was a very lean team. When you're a startup, that's what you can afford at the time. I've always come from the startup world. I take a lot of those lessons from the tech world of like start small, be lean for a bit until you can actually truly scale it and bring on those extra hires. So
you started in your living room in that case, since the pandemic started around that time?
I feel like this kitchen counter where I'm speaking to you from now, that's kind of where I always work whenever I work remotely. But I think this is where I typically take all my phone calls. And and the designers were actually based in Colombia, Medellin. She would sometimes through the pandemic actually travel to New York. We'd have an in-person meeting when we could, but everything else is remote. I think everyone post-pandemic, that's kind of what we're used to, right? Just getting on a Zoom call.
It sounds so easy the way you explain it, but tell us about the pain point.
It's definitely a roller coaster. I come from the tech world. I didn't come from product innovation or product development. It was a wake-up call for me because I thought we can get to tech pack in 6 weeks. And by tech pack, it's like, that's kind of like the final document where you send off to factory to say, here are the specs, right? Here's what the shoe's going to look like, the colors, the Pantone, the reference materials we're going to use. And that was not the case. Designers gave me a wake up call to be like, hey, this is a process. We need to ask you really, I always joke. I always say it was kind of like therapy. They kind of asked me questions about my childhood and what sneaker silhouettes I liked wearing as a kid. And what books I like to read, and really try to understand my own ethos to see like how we can bring that into the brand, both from a footwear perspective and then also through a storytelling perspective. That was important because I grew up in Queens, where I always say sneaker culture kind of started and really flourished as a kid. Grew up in the 80s and 90s where like basketball was big. This was NBA time, prime. Everyone was watching it on the TV, and you kind of fell in love with the players as well as the sneakers that they were wearing. So I think that's really what shaped me. The designers were kind of trying to pull that information out to figure out how do we come up with a brand and come up with the right type of initial footwear piece. That was kind of a wake-up call for me because I thought we can move a lot quicker. The process took a few months. And I think that was also a byproduct of just being at home, right? During COVID, we were kind of at the mercy of when the factories would reopen. So we had time to develop a little more intentionally over the months and before we had to actually send that stuff off to the factory. That was something I had to adjust to because I'm so used to that startup life where you're just like, go, 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 go. We're going to move quickly. I realized I had to slow down. The second thing was I've always used the other side of my brain in analytics. And now I'm like in this creative mode, which I didn't think I had, but I'm trying to embrace now. One of my favorite things now is going to the factory and playing with the materials, touching the suede, touching the notebook, looking at the colors. Is it matching? I'm so OCD about it. I will go look at it in the sunlight versus the factory light, which is just very artificial in nature to see, is this working? I've always been creative, but it's never been unlocked, I suppose. And I think building the company has really brought that to the forefront for me. So that has been a journey as well.
Then my question obviously was like the left and the right side of the brain. Is it then as an entrepreneur, we need to have both? And when you are working with the designers and you're working with your left side of the brain, how does that work?
Now it kind of is seamless. As an entrepreneur, you're wearing multiple hats. Sometimes you're someone's therapist. Sometimes you're the marketer. Sometimes you're running social media and you're talking to sometimes you're customer support, pretending you have a customer support person and you're answering the question. So that is something I was used to because I thrive in that chaos of a startup life. So those are things I've done in the past that came to me easier. The difficult part for me was I still struggle with this is tapping into that creative kind of zone. Because sometimes when I look at my friends who are just creative by nature, I think everyone's kind of creative by nature. They are just that they full-time work in the creative arts. They just go into their zones, right? They know what to do to tap into it. They're kind of just like working and creating. That's something I still struggle with. Like, how do I get into it? I notice when I'm at the factory, I can jump in quickly. I've been so processed to focus on that other side of my brain with analytics that it's harder for me to kind of make that seamless transition. Innately, we all have a creative side. It's just like finding the ways or things that interest you that pull it out. Maybe you're interested in pottery or ceramics. I've always loved fashion and materials like saris and colors. And when I go shopping, I like more premium materials. That's something that we're trying to also carry over to Lilith. My struggle shopping sneakers as a kid is that the women's shoes would be so cheaply constructed. You can see the glue. You can see how they didn't use the pretty suede, right? When I went to create Lilith, I was, no, women pay attention to these details. We're obsessed with fabrics. And when we go shopping, we're always touching things. I wanted to make sure when someone picked up the shoe, they can see all those details. They can see the laser engraving of our logo. It's understated, but they can also see the suede and how supple it is and how the notebook, you can see the pebbling. Those were things on the creative side I'd had, right? Like as a consumer, as a woman. And now I'm kind of translating this into footwear.
You're creating your own shoe because it was your dream. And I agree with you. When I started to run, there were white sneakers and then they were maybe black or gray and then all the colors came later on when Nike took over, when you were able to create your own shoes. Where do you see yourself go in 2024?
Yeah, I think for me, when we launched in 21, it was late 21. So that first fiscal year was primarily focused on just how do we sell our shoes, especially since it's still COVID and people are still inside and they're going on their daily walks, but how do we get them to buy the shoe? So that was year one's focus. Year two was how do we do pop-ups? Because everyone was saying, hey, I need to try on your shoe. You're a new brand. I don't know your sizing. All legitimate concerns. We did 10 pop-ups last year, which was very grueling. It's very taxing on the body. You're schlepping all these boxes around. That was kind of eye-opening because I realized how easily the shoe converts, right? When it's physically on someone's foot, they look at themselves in the mirror. It's an immediate yes. They're like, wow, this is comfortable. This is great. There's no questioning and going back and forth the way you would maybe online. That was, to me, made me realize, one, we need to get our shoes into more retailers. so that people can go, we can direct them to a store, a luxury boutique, a luxury retailer, and say, hey, you can try on the shoes there and shop there. And then two, I would love a physical space, just a kind of a showroom where they can buy, but also kind of like a concept store. That is how our consumer shops. It's not necessarily kind of like just sales, sales, sales. It's like where we're having events and they can come and do things. Like it's a little more of an immersive marketing experience for our consumers. So I think to me, that's kind of what's top of mind for 24 is like more retail strategy and just getting into more retailers and then trying to get a physical space where we can do some fun stuff.
Sounds like cool. And where would that be, in New York City or somewhere else around the world?
It would be in New York. I was actually in Sri Lanka and we were talking about doing something there where it's less about sales in Sri Lanka, where, because we do so much of our photography there and we've done some workshops there now about brand storytelling. That could be a fun community space. I think definitely New York. I would love it in Queens where the story is really based out of. It's very authentic. We've done some pop-ups in Queens before that have been successful. I always say Queens is like, I feel like at that precipice of becoming the next Brooklyn. Everyone had this hope in Brooklyn. And I think Queens is quickly becoming that. I've always been biased. I was born and raised here. The first place should definitely to be in line with just kind of our storytelling to be in Queens.
Going back to the roots where all
Absolutely.
started for you.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about Sri Lanka when you said you just traveled there and you also do the photo shoots there.
So yeah, my parents were there. They left in the 80s. They were refugees during the Civil War and they had gone to Germany and then they came to the US and finally settled there. And so I really wanted to tell that storytelling of that migration story of immigrants. I was born and raised in Queens. That's how I heavily identify with. And I think in my teens and as I got older, I was struggling with this sense of identity because I always say I'm from New York, from Queens. That's my first identity. And then I say I'm Tamil, which is where my parents' ethnicity is and what my ethnicity is. And I wanted to share a bit of that storytelling because my parents would always reminisce about, we're from a smaller island off the northern coast. It's 8 hours north by car from Colombo, the capital, and then we have to get on a boat to get to our islands. It's quite remote and it's beautiful. And they always would reminisce about these stories. That to them was home and Queens is home for me. So I wanted to juxtapose that storytelling in our brand, that lushness. And we're always influenced by the tropics and greenery. And we were built during COVID when people were trying to blend that indoor and outdoor lifestyle and that grittiness of concrete jungle and kind of playing with these themes of lushness of tropics. We were trying to play with that. The Sri Lanka storytelling is very important and kind of key to the brand and key to who I am. And that kind of came out through even through the footwear colors. That's very tropical inspired. And the visuals is very stunning because I wanted to move away from that hyper masculine lens of the footwear industry, right? The footwear industry has been masculine for 50 plus years, right? Male sports, male celebrities, male athletes. And we really haven't centered women and femme voices. I wanted to flip that paradigm a bit and do our photography where like someone's wearing a gorgeous dress or a gorgeous sari and they're wearing sneakers. And that's okay, right? When I was younger, I had to dress like a boy, like a tomboy, because that's what sneaker culture said, like how you had to fit in. If you were going to hang out with the guys on the basketball court, you had to be a little more masculine. You couldn't be feminine. You couldn't be a girl. I wanted to change that notion. Young woman, young girl who interacts with our brand can see you can be in your feminine energy and that's okay. You can be in the sneaker world. You can be alongside all of those athletes, etc. So the photography in Sri Lanka kind of really like helped us bring that to life. And I think also like just highlight darker skinned models. Oftentimes brands focus on just the white demographics and our audience is global. I think more and more like brown and black people are the global, I always say the global majority. That's where our brand resonates. I want those folks to feel seen. I want to make sure that we're inclusive in the models we use and how they show up and how they dress. Our designers in Medellin, I would love to photograph there one day and to kind of showcase just like culture. I'm all about showcasing all those ties around the world and how we all fit globally. I wanted to change that a little bit because I didn't quite see that with some of the other legacy.
And I've seen your website. The sneakers are very colorful and bright, vibrant. And I just want to buy all of them. The lavender shoes, that really spoke to me, is elegant. You said it's comfortable. When you have a sneaker, not all of those sneakers are comfortable. So tell us a little bit more about the making then.
Yeah. So when I was kind of going down this path of starting the company, this was probably around like 2019, I started talking to just random women, being like, just what's your experience with sneakers? And the single thing that everyone kept saying, and you're a runner, so you're going to be familiar with this, but everyone kept saying, I want the comfort of a Brooks or an Asics, but in a lifestyle shoe. They were like, and I know that too, because I used to run, I don't like to announce this because I was a terrible runner, but I ran track in high school and I used to wear Brooks. I know how comfortable they are because I have flat feet, I have wide feet. So I knew the struggles of most of these women. When I went to build us, how do we do that? How do we get the comfort of a running shoe but make it elegant enough where they can wear it in the daytime and then they can wear it in the evening. Now I have people who wear it to their wedding guests and they'll wear it to a wedding. For me, that was like how do we introduce performance into lifestyles? We actually work with Vibram. They're the ones who manufacture the sole that we use. It's a high abrasion EVA sole. So it's incredibly lightweight. And it's typically a sole that I would say is used in outdoor performance. So hiking, mountaineering, that's kind of where it is typically used in. And I would say it's typically used in men's shoes. Men are so familiar when I say Vibram. They're like, oh yeah, I have that sole in this shoe. But women have never seen the logo. They haven't heard the brand. They don't know the comfort. And I think that's how the industry has kind of gate kept, right? Performance from the women's offering. And so we're trying to really bridge performance into lifestyle and introduce that level of comfort that men have enjoyed for decades, but women haven't. The other thing we do is just make sure we have a full size range. I used to shop the men's section because I couldn't get the sizes I wanted. We have a women's 5 all the way to a 14.5. So 20 sizes, all half sizes included. That was one of the big pain points women were struggling because they'd have to shop in children's if they were smaller or shop in men's if they were larger. But yeah, the comfort piece was pretty key from the beginning of some of the things as we were interviewing and surveying women. They wanted the comfort of that running shoe, but into an everyday, because women are running maybe 1 hour out of the day, but we're on our feet maybe 10 plus hours. We wanted to bring that comfort through whatever pair they were wearing.
You're made for success because as you said, we're running maybe an hour, but then it's also about the look. So we want to look good, we feel good, 100%. And we want to look hip. We don't want to have those clunky shoes and then they're actually hurting the feet much more. It seems like you're a very busy person. So what do you do when you don't work?
I love to travel. I try not to work all the time. In the last year, I haven't done too much traveling. I just came back from the Sri Lanka trip, which was that much needed break from all the work stuff. But in a past life, when I used to work at, corporations, I used to travel. I used to live out of a suitcase and I do miss that. So I would like to say that's something I'd like to do for fun. I love going to museums, galleries. I love art. So anything tied to that. And I love reading books. I'm always consuming news articles. We just launched this newsletter recently, and I'm always curating fun things that are just outside of the sneaker world. Because I think our consumer is like, they're sneakerheads, sneaker enthusiasts, luxury consumers, but they also have a life outside of their footwear. Other brands just feed you sneaker news all the time. But like our customers are so worldly. They're well-traveled. They're global. They're interested in geopolitics. They're interested in the arts. They're interested in galleries. And so we try to curate that type of news because it's kind of a reflection of what I'm interested as well. And that's our consumer at the end of the day. So
agree more with you because I feel like I'm running, even though I'm running a marathon and then I'm done with that. And I like to put the lipstick on, wear something elegant so I can wear your shoes. Thank you so much. We will see you in a pop-up store in New York.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thanks for having me today.
What a cool and uplifting conversation. What are you taking away? Take it from the Ironwoman. We have episodes every Monday. Check in with us with cool people. And also download the book or get the book. Take it from the Ironwoman, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. Thank you for your support. Like us on the social media platforms and see you next time.